Okay. Posters, if you haven't already, and then everyone else's will pop up. Maddie, flip it over, and you won't be distracted. So, who felt like they could articulate a decent answer? Like, I had a strong opinion about what happened. Either that was totally fine or not okay, or somebody's rights were violated, something like that. Who feels like they could give us a little bit of an answer to those questions? Mr. Dangling.
Well, whenever you're in school, you have a certain number of rights that are taken away from you, and one of those is privacy. If a principal feels that he has a reason to search you, whether it's an anonymous tip or he just feels that you're doing something you shouldn't be, he can search you for that because you don't have the same rights that you do outside of school. Granted, if this happened outside of school, it'd be breaking the Fourth Amendment because you have those rights, but as soon as you walk into school, you give up quite a few rights, one of them being freedom of speech, and the other biggest one being privacy and the Fourth Amendment, because if they feel it's a danger, or if they have any reason to search you, then they could search you for basically anything.
Okay. I'm going to agree with 98% of what you said. Here's what I'm going to take issue with. Your rights do change when you walk into school. So think about what time you physically stepped on the school campus this morning. Because honestly, this is true for me as a teacher. So for me, that'd be like 7:30 sharp I was here. Something changed when you walk in the door. A couple things might have changed, but here's one for sure. To what degree do your civil liberties apply now that you're in the school versus when you were at home eating breakfast this morning? You don't necessarily lose rights. This is the one word I'm just going to change. They are diminished. It's kind of like, think of a volume knob that goes to 100. Your free speech knob might have been at 100, especially if you're 18. When you come to school, it got cranked down. It was 100. I'm not going to say what it is. Honestly, it depends who your teacher and your principal and your school policies say. It got cranked pretty far down. Okay? If you don't believe me, try flipping off your teacher or telling them they're an idiot, because we know how that's going to end. Don't really do that. Okay? But you do that walking down Main Street, you don't get arrested, you don't go to jail. Okay? So I'm not going to say you lose those rights. They are diminished. Other than that, I completely agree with everything you said. Okay? Does anyone think what happened to those kids is wrong? Like someone broke rules or violated rights? I just get the feeling that 90% of us just kind of glaze over and go, I don't know anything about this. If that's true for you, something you should think about is if you don't have something to say on this question, could that very easily happen to you in a scenario? Could that happen to you? Do rumors ever get spread that aren't true? Welcome to high school in small town Wyoming. If you don't have strong feelings on this, it's because you don't know what rights you have and where they come from. Now, I'm pretty good at that, because I get paid to teach you that for a living. And it's something that I think you should have started being taught, I don't know, 8 or 10 years ago. So you came in here as a junior and kind of knew what you're talking about. It's not your fault. It's ours. Here's what I'll tell you. What are some rights that you have that are guaranteed by the United States Constitution? Mr. Dankelman said privacy. Yes, the word privacy is not explicitly used. However, the Fourth Amendment usually is interpreted to protect privacy, plus the Invisible Amendment, you could say, protects privacy. Okay, and free speech. So let's say privacy and speech. Can anyone name another right that is protected for you that you could point to in the United States Constitution? That's not in the Constitution, but good guess.
Second.
What does that protect?
Right to bear arms.
Yes. The right to keep and bear arms, and for states to have a well-regulated militia. Anyone know another one? Come on. Think 8th grade with Mr. Bell. What rights do you have that you could point somewhere in the Constitution and say, right there, I get that right? Any of you had U.S. Army soldiers sleeping in your house eating your mac and cheese lately?
No.
Me neither. Are you protected from having to do that?
Yes.
Does it come from the Constitution?
Yes.
Is it the amendment after the second?
Yes.
which would make it the,
Third.
okay. People, if you have a mobile device, like an iPad or a phone or something, pull it out. My screen's not playing nice with my tablet today. If you don't have one, open a new tab in your browser and type in Interactive Constitution and just Google it. If you do have a mobile device, go to your app store. I have a folder full of school stuff on my mobile devices. Some of you do. Okay, like here's mine. Canvas is in there. My to-do list stuff. If you're on your mobile device, type in U.S. Constitution in your App Store search window. I like the one if you're an Android lady, Ms. Kommen, welcome to the dark side. This one just has a little United States flag icon, this screen. It's just called U.S. Constitution, and it's got an American flag. Get a free one. I tell everybody, when I was a junior in college, I had this history professor. I don't remember his name. And I don't remember most of what he taught me because he was pretty boring. But he always walked around and he had a Constitution in his back pocket. And I always laughed at him like, what a weirdo. Like one day, I seriously saw him at the grocery store on like a Saturday, and he had a Constitution flopping in his back pocket. And I was like, I'm never going to be that weird when I'm a history teacher. Now, little did you know, I always have one in my pocket. It's just not a physical copy. I have this app on all my devices. Now, I also have a lot of it memorized because I teach it. When that downloads, you can look at the different articles of the Constitution, which are kind of like chapters. But when you talk about rights for you, the single biggest place those are found is the Bill of Rights. Someone who's passed a government class, what the heck's the Bill of Rights?
First 10
First 10 what?
amendments.
To the Constitution. So if you go to amendments, 1 through 10 are collectively known as the Bill of Rights. Here's a fun one for you students on a Monday morning. Most of you, I hope, know the 8th Amendment. It protects you from two basic things. What's one that you know? What type of punishment?
Cruel and unusual.
Cruel nor unusual punishment can be inflicted. Does anyone know what the other protection of the 8th is?
Think of it.
It's on the screen. It's on the screen.
Excessive
Excessive bail or fines cannot be imposed. So when you get arrested and accused of any crime except for first-degree murder in Wyoming, our Constitution says you have to have the opportunity to post bail. So if you robbed a bank and it's on camera and we know, the judge might give you bail and say, well, it hasn't been proved yet. You can pay, $500,000 and get out until your trial starts. If you get a ticket, do they take you to the courthouse and make you see a judge right then and there? So you're kind of like released on bail until your court date. Does anyone know what that's called? For like petty crimes when they just let you go and say, here's a ticket instead. You get released on your own recognizance, or OR, own recognizance. Kind of like you recognize if you skip court you're in trouble, right, Corey? And he goes, and it's okay. Just be there next month. Have a nice day. Okay, so the 8th Amendment protects you from cruel and unusual punishment. Fun question, students sitting in a high school right now. Does that apply to you while you're seated here in this classroom?
Yeah, but not really at the same time.
Are you protected from cruel and unusual punishment while in school by the 8th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution?
Yes.
No.
Why?
Because, what's a punishment? After your trial or pleading guilty, you get sentenced. That's a punishment. Your teacher and that big swatter or paddle or their boot, when you talk back, that's not a punishment. And you are protected from getting beaten by your teachers, but not by the 8th
So
Amendment.
why'd they take it
What
out?
if you committed a crime in school?
But does the school enforce criminal law? Nope. Just school rules. So here's a famous example, Kim, because I know you think I'm making this up. You're right to be skeptical. You shouldn't trust me.
I don't even know.
Okay? A kid in Louisiana got paddled by his principal. If your parents didn't grow up in the 70s, ask them about it. Basically, a big old wooden board with holes in it so you could get it swinging faster. You bend over in the principal's office and you just get whacked on the butt cheek with that thing. And this kid got paddled so bad that when he went to the doctor, they said he couldn't sit down for 11 days because his butt was so bruised. Now you're thinking, whoa, 8th Amendment, that's a right, it's in the Constitution. And his parents filed a lawsuit against the school and said, that is cruel and unusual to paddle my teenage boy so severely that he couldn't sit for 11 days. It went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, no, that wasn't necessarily right, but your remedy is not the 8th Amendment because that was not a punishment. It wasn't enforced by a court of law. It was a principle in a school, and school issues are different. Now, if that was a judge, and you pled guilty to speeding, and he said, I sentence you to 100 paddles, the 8th Amendment would apply, but not in school. Now, what does any of this have to do with anything? First of all, put that app on your phone.
It's not loading.
When it does load. If you're curious, everyone look to your left. On that bulletin board, there are some pamphlets about your rights in school as a student. Does everyone see the blue one with the cop car in the middle?
Do you know you're right?
If you ever get pulled over, you should have one of those in your car or on your phone. If you want to snap a picture of that or get a copy, I have the rectangle one with the cop on it. This one right here is like the wallet size one that I just folded that up. It's like what to say and what not to say. If you have not taken a gander at that, you should sometime this week. Now, what does any of this have to do with U.S. history in the 1950s and 60s? Where in the heck are you going with this? Cool story, bro, but why should I care? Does anyone have an answer?
Civil rights, civil liberties.
Okay, before we can learn about the civil rights movement, guess what we have to know?
What's going on?
What type of rights? Okay, pause, listen. This is one of those what color was George Washington's white horse kind of questions, and I know on camera those aren't answered, but in here we know the answer.
You have to know the civil rights.
What type of rights do we have to know before we can learn about the civil rights movement?
Civil rights.
Yes, are any of the rights we've discussed civil rights so far today? Privacy, search and seizure, guns, cruel and unusual punishment, are those civil rights?
Yeah.
No, they are not. Those are called civil liberties, like freedoms. Now, I know you're like, oh, you're being all technical and being a government teacher. A little bit, but before we can talk about civil rights, we got to know what they are. Because Martin Luther King Jr. did not rally people in the South for the right to bear arms. Right? He wasn't calling for more black people to own more ARs. But he was calling on people to march and fight for civil rights, not civil liberties. If your app loaded, there are 2 amendments that include your civil rights. They're not in the Bill of Rights. They're not 1 through 10. Now, if yours didn't load or you're not on a copy of the Constitution, you can look at my screen to your right. Does anyone know what 2 amendments give you your civil rights? Not civil liberties, civil rights. Very close but wrong.
12, 13,
Halfway right.
12,
Other half.
11.
Wrong way. And the biggest one. Okay.
Oh.
Ladies, you should pay attention. Because one of the big things that you'll notice from this week is we might be talking about African Americans and Latinos, but today the very same questions are going on about different groups of people. 13th and 14th Amendment are where you will find your civil rights. Those are different from civil liberties, trust me. Okay, civil liberties are freedom of speech, religion, press, petition, assembly, self-incrimination, excessive fines and bail, etc. Civil rights are being treated equally. It's kind of like what everyone else gets, I get too. Ladies, do you see why I mentioned you specifically? Is that a hot topic even between our presidential candidates right now?
Oh, good Lord, yes. What? What? I'm sorry.
People running for president, do they talk about the wage gap and women's rights? What did Obama do last week? He unveiled a statue or a monument to women's equality. Did you guys read about that?
Got this.
Okay, the two Democratic candidates who are still running against each other and are getting voted on in New York tomorrow, Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, argue a lot about who's going to treat women better or advance women's rights more. And some people say, well, duh, Hillary, she is one. I'm not gonna answer that question. But Bernie Sanders says he would do more, and there's some interesting stuff they've thrown back and forth. Like, did anyone read Bernie Sanders looked up what Hillary Clinton pays women on her campaign? And it's less than she pays men. So it's kind of an interesting hot topic. That is a civil right. When you say, I want to be paid the same, or get access to the same schools, or be treated the same under the law because I'm female versus male, or I'm black versus white, or I'm Latino versus Asian. Okay, those are civil rights. So civil rights are about equality, not freedoms. Now, the 13th Amendment, after the Civil War, what did it do very simply?
Abolish slavery.
Yes. Now, what did you say?
Huh?
What did you say?
Nothing.
Because I heard you say something highly inappropriate.
Well, what do you think I said?
I'm not going to repeat it, because I'm not a racist prick. So you better not say that again.
Well, I didn't say anything racist, so you can check your own self.
Yeah, turn it back on me, tough guy.
I will.
If you say that again, you will be out of here, and I will give your ass an F for the rest of the year. Do you understand me?
Go for gold.
Yeah, I will. Try me, buddy. Now, if you look at the 14th Amendment, this is probably the most important one in our Constitution today. One of the questions we didn't answer when we wrote the Constitution and when we came up with the first 13 amendments, no one ever said, who's a citizen? And if you're not a citizen, how do you get to be one? And it's one of those like, duh, we should have said that way before. But we didn't say that until after the Civil War. Now, if you are a U.S. citizen, how did you get your citizenship?
Being born here.
You emerged from your mother's womb on United States soil. Do we agree?
Yes.
In simple terms. What happens if you were born in Canada, not on a military base or in a U.S. embassy? Do you automatically get American citizenship?
No.
No, but can you come back and get it?
Yes.
Does anyone know what that process is called?
Naturalization.
Yes. So basically the 14th Amendment says this. If you're born here, automatic citizen. If you're not born here, Congress is going to set up some stuff you can go through. Like you guys all know the famous 100-question multiple choice test. That's the last step. It's really the easiest part. There's a way to become a citizen. Here's the most important part of the 14th Amendment. If you look at the first paragraph, last clause, here's what it says states can't do. States cannot deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection under the laws. Can anyone put that in plain English for me? States must treat everyone equally under their laws. What does that mean? Give me an example, like violate that.
Like why women can't kick out the Mexicans?
Okay, like say if you're a certain ethnicity, you can't live here. True.
Darn.
How about a ridiculous one not meant to offend anyone? Like, that would never happen so we can laugh. Because sadly, that doesn't sound that ridiculous. After being in junior ledge last week. Okay, I'll give you one. You look at the speed limit sign. In my home state of Montana, there were always 2 speed limit signs posted on the same pole. Daytime speed limit, nighttime, or daytime and trucks.
Really?
Yeah, because like semis have to drive slower. Now, fun fact, switch that one, you got 70 miles an hour on the highway for men, 60 for women.
That's fair.
No.
I picked a ridiculous one, I'm not trying to offend anyone, I'm trying to make you laugh. Now listen, ladies, does that violate a civil right of yours? A right to be treated equally given to you by the 13th or 14th Amendment.
Yeah.
Okay? If someone said, point that out, would you say the last clause of the first paragraph of the 14th Amendment, known as the Equal Protection Clause? Can women be treated differently under the law?
No.
Can men?
No.
Can Hispanics, Latinos, Chinese, purple, green people from Mars?
No. Oh.
Can straight versus gay versus whatever other degree of not straight people be treated differently under your state's laws?
No.
Can you have a straight speed limit and a gay speed limit?
No.
Now, do you see where I'm going with that example? Listen, we laugh at that. We laugh at that. And that's good that we can laugh. Think about the definition of marriage, though. And here's what you guys have to recognize. If you are this ignorant, because I can't think of another word. If you are this ignorant, let me fix that for you. When you talk about rights or political issues, okay, let's say Kim over here is preaching that we should allow same-sex marriage in Wyoming. We do now, but just since last June. And Maggie says, no, we shouldn't. You can't just base that on your opinion. And first of all, that doesn't make you gay to say that I think same-sex couples should be allowed to be married. I think they should, not because I'm gay or I'm a lesbian or anything like that. I'm happily married to my wife who's a member of the opposite sex. However, I don't base that on my opinion of gay people or what's right or what my church tells me or my mom told me. Because you go to a different church and he has a different mom and you were raised differently than all of us. Here's what we have to base that question on. The Constitution. If you can't have a straight and a gay speed limit, how can you have a straight and a gay definition of marriage? The speed limit thing, you laughed and said that's crazy. If you can't have a straight and a gay speed limit, we agree you can't, right? What's that violate?
Right.
Equal protection clause of the 14th Amendment, which is a civil right. How can you then say, here's the definition of marriage for straight people and for gay and they're different? Isn't that still a state law? Doesn't that still violate the equal protection clause of the 14th Amendment, like gay people or not? Yes, it does.
So what was the controversy then? Because that's been an issue for like the past 15 years.
Because a lot of people don't agree with it and they think they're going to
What's the controversy with getting teachers to use laptops instead of colored pencils and paper? It's the same controversy as allowing same-sex marriage. But it's always been that way. The world is going to end if we go to laptops or letting gay people get married. Either way, it's Armageddon. I mean, seriously, did you guys read what the state of Utah was one of the main plaintiffs in that Supreme Court
because
case?
they're all a bunch of...
Here was... No. Not all.
A lot of them are both.
Do you know what one of their main arguments for keeping the definition of marriage as one man, one woman was?
God doesn't approve.
The problem is that doesn't work because the Constitution says have your...
Well, I know, but that isn't that? Like, don't they
It's a
bring
good
religion
guess,
into it?
but in courts that doesn't work.
Right.
They said the main purpose of marriage is to make babies.
Oh.
And since two men or two women can't make babies with each other, we shouldn't let them get married.
It's okay.
Yeah, of course. And they can still have babies, not with each other, but there's lots of other ways. Lots of people who aren't married get pregnant all the time, do we agree?
Yeah.
So it's possible.
Yeah.
So here's my point. When you talk about being treated equally, someone else has that right guaranteed and you're deprived of that, that's a civil right. It's kind of like saying treat me just as well or the same as other people in your country. When you talk about personal, individual freedoms, like to carry your gun into Loaf and Jug, or to say you hate Obama walking down Main Street, those are civil liberties. Because you do have the right to do both of those. Civil rights are being treated equally. Can we tell the difference now? Okay, I hope we can. So here's what we're going to do. Post your discussion if you haven't already, and we're going to go to TCI.
And I'm hot.
And we're going to go to lesson 44. And your screen should look like mine. So TCI, lesson 44. I know.
I put one on there. I was listening. I reloaded. I did.
That's a scary thought, isn't it?
Should be what? Excuse. It didn't hard. So. We don't know, it sounded.
No, it's not. Trust me.
While we're getting here, I kind of approached this topic, one second, kind of like the Holocaust. Your teachers have already beaten you over the head with it. And that is not to diminish the importance or gravity of these events, but I'm not going to beat you over the head again with it.
That's good.
When your family and consumer science teacher is teaching you about a topic, then I'm like, I'm pretty sure 8th grade you got hit hard with the civil rights movement too, right? Your English teacher, juniors, civil rights movement, Martin Luther King Jr., I Have a Dream speech. So this is kind of like the Holocaust, where I'm going to say we're going to do the quick and dirty and look at it differently, but we're not going to spend all semester on it. 44. 44. Your screen should look like mine. There's a statue of a cop with a dog that's menacing this kid right here.
They actually have a statue.
Yep. Welcome to Alabama.
That's a statue, that's interesting.
My
Yep.
internet is so slow.
It's good artwork.
We will overcome, Maggie. Okay, question. She
Yeah.
needs. That's a really good question.
Oh my god. Sorry. That scared me for some reason. I don't know why. Is that really stressful?
For today, can you look off her screen, Aubrey, and then I'm going to try and get you in here. Period 3.
Can you redo yours and see if mine actually posted from the clip?
Are you loaded?
Yeah. Cause you did.
How big is it?
I'm going to have to do that later. Yeah. As long as it's quick, yeah.
Oh.
Because I'm going to have to delete someone and put her in, but I'll get it done today. Thank you for telling me. Okay, here's what we're going to do. Go to the bottom of the page, and you see kind of a big paragraph that's numbered 1 through 7. Below that blue bar.
True or false?
Okay, true and false quiz, 1 through 7. You have 2 minutes, go.
Wait, what? Just
True or false, all I have to put is like 1T, 2F, 3T. True or false, just, no.
It's just showing you if like we actually learned something.
T or F, no. There's 7 of them, true and false. We hope you don't.
I'm guessing these are all true. They're all
True or false, 1 through 7. If you don't know, just take a guess.
People preach. I want to go to one too. The mom actually just gave me away. Yeah, I went up to a lady in the store. Said,
No, I'm being serious. I don't want to.
Give me a thumbs up if you have all 7 true or false. If your thumb is not up, you have 15 seconds. Just guess if you can't read it. If your page isn't loading, don't worry. Okay, first question. On the first day of a bus boycott to protest segregation in Montgomery, Alabama, 90% of the city's African American riders stayed off of the buses. True or false? If you say true, stand up. So you're saying 9 out of 10 basically chickened out and didn't go on the buses that day, right?
Yep.
If you're sitting down, you're saying false. Okay, that is clearly true. Good job if you were standing. Sit back down. Second question. Between 1957 and 1968, which is when he was assassinated, Martin Luther King Jr. traveled more than 6 million miles to lead demonstrations and speak out against racial discrimination. Stand up if you say that's true. 6 million miles, really?
That's a lot. Seemed like a lot.
Yes, that is true.
Oh, I was like,
I know, I was like,
We do have aircraft and we do have automobiles in the 60s, right? He didn't have to walk the whole way. Third question. On the first day of desegregation at Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas, 9 African American students faced an angry mob numbering about 1,000 people. There's a picture. Okay? 1,000 angry people really showed up to yell at him for going to school. True. True. Okay? Some of you are starting to figure out the pattern. Here's question 4. After college students staged a sit-in at an all-white lunch counter in North Carolina to protest segregation, almost 30 similar sit-ins were held in 7 states within 1 year. Stand up if you think that's true. 30 sit-ins, 7 states. Gosh dang it. Not trying to be anticlimactic or anything. That's false.
oh, really?
Okay, more than 30 of them were held within a month, not a year. So basically more prevalent than you thought. Question 5. Children, if they were at least 10 years old, were arrested by the police for demonstrating against segregation in Birmingham, Alabama. So kids as young as 10 were arrested and sent to jail. Stand up if you think that's true. You think it's false, Hatcher? You're right. Kids as young as 6 went to jail, not 10.
I didn't.
Okay, number 6. Nearly 100,000 people traveled from around the country to Washington, D.C. to participate in a 1963 demonstration protesting racial discrimination. True. If you think it's true, stand up.
Wait, when I was in
100,000 people showed up. You're right. Over 250,000 people showed up. Last question. In the summer of 1964, in Mississippi, nearly 10 black homes were firebombed, like people threw Molotov cocktails or started their houses on fire, and almost 20 demonstrators were beaten. Okay, in Mississippi, 10 homes were firebombed and 20 people were beat up. Nobody thinks that's true? You guys are smart. 30 of their homes were firebombed, 80 of them were beaten, and at least 3 of them were killed. Okay? Now, here's what you have to keep in mind. There is a distinction between civil liberties, that's searches and seizure, rights, bear arms, free speech, and civil rights. I want you to turn to someone who's next to you or around you and explain in your own words what is the difference between a civil right and a civil liberty, and where can you find them go? Where can you find them?
Constitution.
Where at in the Constitution?
14.
And 13. Okay, now you answer the flip side. Civil liberties, what are those? She said equality and things like the 14th Amendment. Like, just treat me the same as guys. I'm going to go grab my AK and make a I Hate Obama sign at my house after school. Who wants to join me? Do I have the right to do that? Is that a civil right or a civil liberty?
Liberty.
Liberty.
But isn't it like...
It's a freedom that's personal to me. I'm not saying let me have AKs like everybody else. So civil liberties, where can we find
Liberty
them?
is personal.
Like, point to them where they come from. Okay, civil rights come from the 13th and 14th Amendment, correct? correct?
State law.
Especially the, where, especially, what amendments? What are the first 10 amendments to the Constitution called, Mr. Dangleman? First 10 have most of your civil liberties. 13 and 14 have your civil rights.